questions. Right, she's going to take. What advice would you give someone nervous about an exam performance? Great one. What's the biggest challenge in training young dancers today? Okay, let me just finish this theme of the dance teachers. So, and I think that the follow-on from this is the identity factor of being able to look to the future. So in a positive way, rather than it's doom and gloom. So when you look at the doom and gloom part of it, you then create a negative atmosphere, negative thought within yourself. And so the whole thing sort of collapses around you. It's like the sunshine is shining and people are walking around in the sun, and there's this individual that's walking along with this cloud and everything's raining around just that individual as they're walking across. So a lot of people have that sort of feel, rather than blowing away the cloud and saying, oh, yeah, there is sun. I mean, when you think about the clouds, I don't know what it's like where you are. I'm looking at blue sky and clouds. So when you're looking at clouds, you know that the sun's shining above the clouds. All you've got to do is wait for the clouds to go. And that's it. It's the patience, waiting for the clouds to go. Returning to the studio is another thing. I know I've got these two questions here. So returning to the studio, for teachers, allowing the students time to get used to the studio again, rather than going bang in. I heard of one studio, the dance school that she teaches for, the principal put the students in for an exam straight away. Now, they weren't prepared for it, and the teacher didn't feel as though they should be in. I mean, she did voice an opinion about that, but the principal insisted on it. So you have to allow those students, the dancers, to get used to it. And it takes 2 to 3 months. They've got the space now, they can move now, but they've been so restricted over that long period of the different lockdowns that they have become shrunk. They shrink in themselves to fit in with the kitchen, the bedroom, wherever they've been training. So give them time to spread, to expand, and try and be empathetic with their situation at home. Everyone has a home situation. They come into the studio and they try and be someone different, because the situations at home could be very difficult or could be wonderful. So realize that everyone has a different situation at home. And also, to the teachers, be mindful of what you're projecting onto the students. What have you gone through that day, the day before, that has wound you up, that you're projecting onto the students? Just be mindful of that and not have a go at the students just because you're wound up. And so take some deep breaths and realize. And the talks that I mentioned that I gave to the for the RAD earlier, earlier in the month, I was saying about the rule of 10. I don't know whether anyone else has heard this, but I think there was a different rule, but I brought out this rule. I thought of this rule. So quote me on this. Rule of 10, 8 compliments to 2 corrections. Obviously blend them in. Don't just go 8 and then 2. Blend in the 2 and the 8. Because, you know, when you think about class, you want to get the corrections over all the time. So all the students, and you think about yourselves when you were students, about being corrected all the time with no compliments there. So your self-esteem lowers because you're never complimented, but you're always corrected. So you always think you're wrong. And especially with ballet, the perfectionism, the black and white thinking of if you're not in first position correctly, then you're wrong. And so there's a mentality that goes with it, and it becomes that what I mentioned earlier, the fixed mentality. So be mindful of doing 8 compliments to 2 corrections. The other thing is that I'm an advocate of meditation, and I was saying to a few of the talks that I've done, either with the RED and the ISTD, to practice, give a 5-minute meditation, guided meditation to the students before class. You'll notice an incredible difference in their abilities and in their thinking. I do have some scripts, so you can contact me on my website, counsellingfordancers.com, and I can send you by email the scripts, so you can read the scripts out, change the wording if you want, to whatever you feel that your students would go with. Right. So let me just go to the what advice would you give someone nervous about an exam? Right. So one of the part of the talks in my workshops is about the difference between anxiety and excitement. So when you think about anxiety, it's all to do with the fight and flight mode. So the body, brain, whatever your senses will sense some traumatic event or possible traumatic event. The brain then contacts the adrenal gland. The adrenal gland pumps adrenaline to the body. Heart is thumping. You're all ready to fight or flight, or an extreme to freeze as well. Excuse me. So that is what happens in the body. But what happens in the mind is totally different, because the identical physical feelings are for excitement. And the difference is the thought, that the thought creates it all. The thought creates excitement or anxiety. So when you're talking, if I'm talking to teachers now or adults, when you're talking to others, the dancers, especially the younger students, you talk with them about the excitement of an exam rather than the anxiety or the stress about an exam. Because the more anxious and stressful you are, the more likely you are to forget what you're meant to be doing. And then that creates the vicious cycle of the anxiety. When I feel like this, I go wrong. So rather than saying that, you say, you're really excited about this, aren't you? And try and get them not to think about the anxiety. Just try and think about the excitement and how they're going to enjoy themselves. That can be exactly the same with performances as well. Exam, performance, auditions, exactly the same thing. It's reframing a situation into a more positive light. Now, if they say, yes, but I did get something before in another exam, or I did go wrong in a performance, or I didn't get the job in the audition. So when that comes up, you say, yes, but because you were anxious then, and therefore your mind was on other things rather than what you're actually meant to be concentrating on. So if you look at the excitement factor and the enjoyment factor, they're less likely to go wrong. They've been practicing for months. The music is exactly the same. The steps are going to be the same. And putting it all together, that's part of them. That's part of their body. Use visualizations as well before, as part of the training to go into the exams. Get them to visualize, so that the music is playing, get them to visualize what they're meant to be doing, and they're going to visualize themselves doing it to their best of their ability. If you get them to do that, then the brain, the mind, and the body all link together to know what is meant to be happening. And then for the exams, the auditions, or whatever the performance is, they can then use that link. They still get the butterflies, they still get the dry mouth, they still get the the wet palms, but that's excitement. And that's what they need to convince themselves of. And that's, for teachers and adults, that's what you need to convince your pupils, that is excitement.   Right. Next question.  」 What's the biggest challenge in training young dancers today? Concentration. The concentration, the length of concentration has reduced so much, um, because everything is hard and fast, it needs to be quick, everything is instant. When you look at social media, flicking through very quickly, they're not concentrating on one thing or another. It's just an instant image, an instant factor. So that's one of the things. The other thing is social media and comparing. So for teachers, try not to use Jane, for instance, as someone to compare with. Jane, that was wonderful. Everybody look at Jane. She's good. This is what I want you to look like. Don't do that. Please don't do that, because it starts an awful cycle of comparing. I've got professional dancers as clients, and they are still in that frame of mind when they come to me after the sessions with me. Then they go away because they realize there's something wrong. Every child, every student, every adult dancer is unique, and that is how you need to instill in them their uniqueness. Now, I'm only 5'5". I got to the Royal Ballet School and I looked at all these 6-footers and I think, I'm not going to be a prince in Swan Lake and Sleeping Beauty. I found a niche, character roles, and I stuck with that throughout my career. I did very well, thank you very much. So it's getting them to realize what they are good at, their uniqueness, and develop their uniqueness. You don't want them all, well, the training is you want them all to be the same. And the thing is, you can't compare one with the other. You can't compare Jane with Eugenie. So try and avoid that. Try and avoid the comparing. Okay. What else was for the what advice would you give teachers who want to support a student struggling with their mental health? I do suggest that all teachers, or at least staff that will be seeing students, do the mental health first aid course. That will at least give you the idea when you're recognizing symptoms and recognizing what to do with those symptoms. And I found listening to the teachers from the RAD, the trainee teachers, that they students trust them. Some students will trust them and will then talk to them, because perhaps at home no one will listen to them, no one will listen to their feelings, everything gets brushed under the carpet. So my suggestion is just be a pair of ears. Do not give advice. Ask them how they think that you, the teacher, or anyone else can help them. So then they're giving you the information, and listen to them. If things get really bad, then obviously you'll need to have some form of protocol at school as to how you deal with situations like that. Go to the One Dance UK website, have a look on there and see if there's any protocols that you could follow or you could use as your own. Unless you are a trained counsellor or a psychotherapist, as I'm a trained psychotherapist, um, don't try and be a therapist. Even the mental health first aid doesn't make you a therapist. It just gives you a recognition of what you're looking at and what you're looking for. The comparing, as we were talking about mental health issues, the comparing also can create eating disorders. So please, teachers, don't mention food, don't mention size, body shape, no body shaming, nothing like that. I've seen the results in my therapy sessions of teachers that have done that. And if you download my app, which I mentioned earlier for those that weren't here, you'll hear a few of the dancers, professional dancers, talking about how their teachers or the the organization, the vocational school, has an ethos about body shape, and that has created these eating disorders in these professional dancers. So please don't talk about body shape or weight or size at all. Biggest challenge training young dancers today. Yeah, well, I did that. That was the concentration level, and really the enthusiasm. I see a lot of teachers so enthusiastic and they're so supportive, and that's wonderful. And I think when you can do that, then you are going to get a really good response. You see, my fear is listening to what's going on now, and in the therapy sessions, and in the workshops that I do when there's no teachers around, is the fact that dancers train in fear. They're not. They start off training because they love it. They want to be a professional dancer, or they just want to enjoy it. But there is a fear. There's a fear of not pleasing the teacher to start with. There's a fear of not pleasing their parents because their parents are paying a lot of money for the teaching. And then for the professional dancers, there's a fear of not getting the role, not getting the continuation contract, etc., etc. So there's a fear of showing a weakness. So do be supportive of that. And there's no research, but I wish someone would come to me and we'll do some research on uh, the longevity if there is a supportive atmosphere, both at the vocational school, schools lower down, and in a professional company. There will be a longevity because there's no fear. They're not going to overdo their work. They're not going to get injuries because they're tired of overdoing their work, and therefore they will dance for a longer period of time professionally. I know I digress there, but I do unfortunately wander off the subject. Uh, Students supporting their mental health. What recurring trends do you see in sessions with dancers? I think I think I've covered a lot of that, which is the eating disorders, the fear, so the injuries that are created by the fear, the 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 injuries are created because the dancer is tired. If you've warmed up properly and you're in perfect health, both mental and physical, there won't be any injuries. If you're starting to do something that you've never been trained for, in other words, if there is a partnering with awkward angles and things like that, you may injure yourself because of that. But if you're doing exactly the same thing all the time, then you're not likely to get injured unless you're tired, unless you're unwell, and the body is screaming at you, rest, please rest. And I do a visualization with a volunteer in the workshops, someone who's had an injury, someone who's in pain. We go through the process of the visualization, and a lot of the time that comes out when you're talking, so that the individual, the volunteer, is in their head is talking to the body. I feed them questions, and then they say what the answers are, what's the thoughts that come into their head, or what do they see in their imagination. Most of the time it is like, give us a break, stop, please, and all of these sort of things that are coming out. We ask ourselves all the time about how we're feeling. What should we do? Should we go there? Should we do this? And if we don't get the answer in our head, the answer we like, we'll ignore it. So our body and our mind are telling us all the time. There's a constant chatter going on. Beware of this, don't do that. This is the way we need to go. All of these sort of expressions that will come into our head. And a lot of them come from the gut. So it's the gut feeling. Listen to your gut feeling, not the brain up here. For practical reasons, yes, the brain up here when you're driving, when you're loading the washing machine, those sort of things. But in other aspects, such as dance, then listen to your gut feelings. Listen to your body. Listen to your mind. Okay. All right.